You've always been the failure of this family. Just don't embarrass us tonight, okay? That's what my mother whispered to me across the dinner table, right in front of my brother's fiancée. And everyone laughed, except her. I hadn't even touched my wine yet. The steak was still bleeding on my plate. And the salt in the air? It wasn't from the food. It was from the decades of being treated like the family shame. But I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. I knew what she had just seen when she Googled me in the bathroom, and I knew exactly what I was about to do next. This story isn't about petty revenge. It's about cold surgical karma with perfect timing, and a twist that shut them up for good. But to understand why what happened next shattered the room into dead silence, you need to know what came before, because this wasn't the first time they tried to make me disappear. It was just the last time they got away with it. Growing up, I was the weird one. Not the golden child, not the academic prodigy. I wasn't athletic, conventionally attractive, or particularly sociable. My siblings? Ivy League this, corporate ladder that, high-profile engagements, lavish weddings. You know the type. Me? I liked coding. Quiet nights, freelance contracts. I moved in silence, and apparently that made me embarrassing. Every holiday, they'd ask if I ever got a real job yet. Every family event, I'd hear whispers about how I still lived like a college dropout. I owned a small apartment, had a quiet digital business. Not flashy, not loud, but stable. But none of that mattered to my family. If it couldn't be shown off on LinkedIn, it didn't exist. And if you're wondering, yes, they did once host a party where I was accidentally left off the group message. That wasn't an accident. I remember my sister's wedding last year. I showed up in a pressed suit, gift in hand, and she met me at the door with a forced smile and said, "Oh, we weren't sure you'd come. You hate crowds, don't you?" She sat me at the table near the kitchen, the one they used for the caterers' kids. The message was clear. You're lucky to be here. Know your place. That night I made a decision. I wouldn't fight for a seat at a table I wasn't welcome at. I'd build a new one they'd have to come crawling to. Fast forward to last week. My brother, Mark, was hosting an engagement dinner at my parents' house. His fiancée, Elise, was new to the family, so this was a get-to-know-everyone dinner. And apparently, an opportunity for my mother to take a torch to me in front of her. "Don't mind her," she said, waving a dismissive hand in my direction when I made a joke. "She never really amounted to much, but we keep her around." I laughed. Politely. Elise's eyes flicked to mine. She didn't laugh. She looked curious. My brother joined in. "I mean, she's smart, I guess," he said with that condescending chuckle. "But, no offense, what do you even do now? Still freelancing or whatever?" The table chuckled. That chuckle, low and pitiful, burned deeper than a scream ever could. I opened my mouth to respond, but my mother cut in. "She's a coder or something," she said, waving her hand again like she was shooing a fly. "Works from home, hates weddings, probably won't even come to yours, Elise." Then she laughed. And Elise didn't. Instead, she stood up, excused herself, and said, "I'll be right back." 5 minutes later, she returned. But this time she wasn't just smiling politely, she was looking at me differently. See, what they didn't know was that while they were making toast after toast, Elise had just typed my name into her phone and found something they'd never bothered to look for. Because I don't post my wins, I don't brag at dinner tables, but when you build a company that licenses its AI tech to Fortune 500 firms, your name makes it into articles. When you quietly become one of the youngest tech consultants for federal cybersecurity contracts, your name ends up on filings. And when you're appointed as a federal judge for digital IP cases, well, that doesn't just show up on Google, it shows up with a gavel. Elise sat down, quietly, looked at me, then at Mark. She tilted her head. "So, your sister isn't successful?" she asked, tone perfectly level. My mother burst into laughter. "Oh, honey, don't take her seriously. She's sensitive. She always was." But Elise didn't break eye contact with me. She said 5 words that made my spine tingle. "I need to talk to you." And my mother? She still had no idea that the woman she just called a failure was about to become the most important person at the wedding. "Why didn't you ever tell them who you were?" Elise's voice was hushed, urgent, as she pulled me aside after dinner. We stood by the staircase, the sound of wine glasses and shallow laughter drifting from the dining room. She held her phone in her hand. My LinkedIn, a news article, a panel video, all open. I shrugged. Would it have mattered? She stared at me. You're a federal judge. I gave her a small, tired smile. They don't care. They decided who I was a long time ago. And that's the truth. When your family decides you're a failure, success doesn't make them proud. It makes them uncomfortable. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? But no, because Elise told Mark, and that's when things got ugly. That night I got a text from my brother. Mark, why are you trying to impress Elise? This isn't about you. Then another, Mark, don't make her think you're something you're not, just stay in your lane. I didn't respond, but the bile rose in my throat. Stay in your lane? He had just married a woman who Googled me and found out more in 5 minutes than he'd bothered to learn in 5 years. He didn't want Elise to see me. He wanted to control how Elise saw me. The next morning, I woke up to a group text. Mom, please don't bring up your work again at the rehearsal dinner. It's not really your night. Don't make this awkward. Dad, just be supportive and normal. Can we all just have one peaceful event? Mark, seriously, don't make this about you. My phone buzzed 3 more times before I turned it face down. No one said congrats on the appointment. No one said, that's incredible. No one said, we were wrong. Just stay quiet. Don't outshine us. Don't be noticed. And that's when I made the vow. I wouldn't make it awkward. I would make it unforgettable. Let me back up just a little. I had kept my judicial appointment quiet for a reason. My name was on public records, but the nature of my cases meant my role wasn't something I broadcasted. I was a judge for digital rights cases, often arbitrating high-stakes intellectual property battles in emerging tech. It was a career that came from years of coding, consulting, and an unexpected opportunity to move from creator to enforcer. I wasn't flashy. I didn't go viral, but I had earned respect in the circles that mattered. And most importantly, I had recently been certified to officiate weddings, a small personal project I did as a favor for a friend in tech who wanted a low-key courthouse elopement, which meant, yeah, I could legally sign a marriage license. Fast forward to the rehearsal dinner. I wore a soft black dress, simple, elegant, and I didn't say a word. I smiled, nodded, clinked glasses. I let my mother take all the air in the room. I let Mark crack his tired jokes about how some people never grow up. At one point, he even said, loud enough for the table to hear, maybe one day you'll bring someone to dinner who's real and not from your online games. They laughed. I didn't. But Elise looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Later that night, she cornered me outside. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know they were like that. I thought it was just dinner talk, but this is bullying. I nodded. She hesitated. I don't even want them at the wedding anymore. That's when I stopped her. Number, you're not going to run. You're going to walk down that aisle, and I'll be there. She looked at me, confused. But I smiled. Just trust me. 3 days before the wedding, I made a call. The officiant they'd booked? Canceled. Elise took care of that quietly. Mark still didn't know, and the best part? Neither did my mother. I filed the paperwork, verified the license, packed the robe, and waited. But just when I thought they couldn't make things worse, they did. The night before the wedding, my father pulled me aside. We're really proud of Mark, he said, his voice calm. He's everything a man should be. I waited. And I just want to say, if you can't be happy for your brother, maybe it's best if you don't come tomorrow. No distractions, no weird energy, just family. My breath caught. Just family. That word again. The knife they kept twisting with a smile. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, I'll be there. He patted my shoulder like I was a child who didn't understand. But, oh, I understood perfectly. And so would they. All rise. The chapel didn't have pews or a courthouse seal, but when I walked in wearing the robe, everyone stood anyway. Not because they were told to, but because they didn't know what else to do. Let me take you to that exact moment. The wedding venue was beautiful. Minimalist, white flowers, soft piano music playing in the background. Sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows like it was blessing the moment. Guests filed in. Family took their seats. The air was full of expectation, buzzing with shallow small talk. My mother was front and center, of course,
proud, poised, wearing pearls like a badge of generational honor. Mark stood by the altar, straightening his cuffs like he was giving a TED talk. And then the music changed. The wedding planner's assistant whispered, "Officiants arriving," and moved to open the door.
That's when everything shifted. Because instead of some aging priest or a family friend in a tux, it was me. I walked in slow, clipped heels, black robe, hair up, chin high. The room didn't just go quiet, it collapsed into silence. My father blinked. My mother sat up straight. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Mark? He looked like he'd just been asked to spell humility in front of a live audience. And Elise? Elise smiled. Let me rewind 5 minutes. Behind the scenes, I was with Elise in the bridal room. She looked radiant, calm, and a little mischievous. She squeezed my hand and said, "You ready?" I nodded. She said, "Let's go break the system." And we walked out together. The photographer caught the moment. The two of us walking down the side aisle, side by side, not in gowns or tuxedos, but in silent, undeniable power. I stepped up to the podium, laid the official marriage documents on the stand, lifted my head, and said, "Dearly beloved." Now you might wonder what Mark did. Surely he objected. Surely he interrupted. He didn't. Because by the time his mouth caught up to his brain, I was already holding the authority, and every guest was watching. He looked at Elise, like he expected her to be embarrassed, to stop the charade. But she didn't flinch. She just stared at him, then at me, and said, "Keep going." So I did. I gave the most calm, articulate, and emotionally loaded wedding address you've ever heard. I talked about unity, respect, about how people aren't always who we think they are, and how sometimes we judge the quiet ones without ever asking what they've been building. I spoke directly to the crowd, but my eyes met my mother's. She looked like she wanted to vanish. Every word was a scalpel, not loud, not angry, precise. I believe love thrives, I said, not where status lives, but where honesty and growth are allowed to breathe, and where we stop mistaking silence for failure. You could hear a pin drop. Then came the vows. Mark mumbled through his, like a man being told to read terms and conditions. Elise? Elise turned to me, and I'll never forget what she said. To the woman officiating this wedding, thank you for showing me what strength really looks like. And to my husband, may we never judge the worth of a person by how loudly the world claps for them, but by how quietly they hold their power. The air was electric, and when it came time for the official declaration, I let the pause stretch, just a few seconds longer than necessary. Then I said it. By the power vested in me by the state of California, I now pronounce you husband and wife. I signed the document, put down the pen, and looked up. My mother approached me after the ceremony, still trying to maintain that tight social smile, like nothing had happened. "You really blindsided us," she said. "No," I replied. "You just never looked." She blinked. "You could have told us. You didn't have to make a show of it." I tilted my head. "I didn't make a show. I did my job, just like you always told me to get one." Then I walked away. Mark didn't speak to me for the rest of the night. He looked like someone who lost a bet to the sibling he didn't even consider competition. But Elise? Elise made sure every guest knew. She clinked her glass and said, "Can we all just take a moment to thank our efficient judge, redacted, for not just performing the ceremony, but for showing us what grace under fire really looks like." Applause erupted. My mother clapped the slowest. That was the moment I had waited years for, not to humiliate them, not to gloat, but to exist fully in a room that once tried to erase me, to make them sit in the discomfort of their own assumptions, to show them that the person they tried to hide was now the one holding the pen. I didn't ruin her wedding. I gave them something worse, a memory they'll never escape. When people say revenge is petty, they're usually talking about shouting matches, ruined cakes, or viral TikToks with receipts. But this was silence served colder than champagne, karma dressed in judicial black, and me rising, not screaming. Let me tell you what happened after. The reception was beautiful, live jazz, soft lights, laughter bubbling over crystal glasses, but not from my family's table. They were quiet now, confused, uncomfortable in the way only prideful people are when the mirror finally cracks. I passed by my mother once. She reached out, gently touching my sleeve. "You made your point." I paused, looked down at her hand, and then, gently, removed it. No, Mom, I said. Life made my point. I just let you hear it for once. She didn't follow me. Mark and Elise danced. And for what it's worth, he looked happy. Maybe because he realized he married someone who values truth. Maybe because the illusion broke, and now there was nothing left to pretend. But either way, I stayed. Not out of spite, but because I belonged there. Because for the first time, I didn't feel like a background character in my own family. I was the one who signed the papers. I was the one who gave them a story they'd tell forever, whether they wanted to or not. The next morning, I checked my phone. One missed call from my dad. No voicemail, then a text. Dad. Never seen your mom that quiet before. I didn't respond. 3 weeks passed. Then came an email from my aunt, who had been at the wedding. Subject line, I owe you an apology. She wrote, I didn't know you'd become a judge. I'm ashamed to say, I didn't bother to ask. For years we accepted what your parents said about you at face value, that you were lost or still figuring things out. But I watched how you handled the ceremony, the way you stood, the way you spoke, the way you didn't gloat. You changed how I see you, and honestly how I see myself. I'm sorry, and I'm proud of you. I sat with that for a long time. Because here's the truth. Sometimes your revenge isn't fire, it's ice. Not because you're cold, but because it freezes the lies people built around you. And when the thaw comes, all they're left with is truth. I still don't talk to my brother much. We send the occasional holiday message. Polite, distant. But Elise and I, we're close now. She calls me for advice, sends pictures. Once even joked, you officiated my wedding and saved my soul in the same weekend. And sometimes, that's enough. But there's one thing I haven't told you. One final moment. A week after the wedding, my mother sent me a gift. A thin box, white paper, no note. Inside, a picture. It was of me, age 14, at a school spelling bee holding a tiny trophy. She had written on the back, I always knew you were smart. I just didn't know how to say it. I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I just took that photo and slid it into the front of the law books on my shelf. Not because it made things okay, but because it reminded me, you can grow from poisoned roots. You can bloom where no one believed you would. You can become the very thing they said you'd never be. So no, I didn't crash the wedding. I ran it. I didn't beg for their approval. I outgrew it. And I didn't make a scene. I made history. In their story, in mine, and in every awkward family dinner that followed. She wanted me silent. My father called me a disgrace. So I became the one thing they couldn't talk over, couldn't laugh off, couldn't ignore. We all have moments when we're made to feel small. Sometimes by strangers, worse, by blood. But the best revenge is not shouting, not fighting, not proving them wrong with rage. It's building a life so powerful, so centered, so quietly dignified, that one day, they realize the person they pushed away is the one who holds the pen. Have you ever been cut off by your own family? Tell me below. Like and subscribe if you believe success is the best revenge. Share this with someone who needs to hear, you are enough. And remember, they laughed at you once. They silenced you. They told you your lane. So go build the whole highway and make them pay the toll just to watch.